And now for something completely different.
Forget everything you've been told by others before. Get ready for the real deal, the full story. Real talk about money, markets, life. Now, it's The Real Investment Show, presented by RIA Advisors.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Financial Fitness Friday. I'm Rich Rosso, CFP. We have, a couple of special guests in our studio today. One is just an observer who's really never heard of Paul McCartney, but we'll talk about that later. We may now let our intern Will live that down. Hey, generations. When we were kids, the same thing happened. Our parents went, "Have you ever heard of Frankie Valli?" No, who's that? No. So obviously we stocks were higher on Thursday. S&P 500, NASDAQ, and Dow all gained ground. S&P remains just about 2% from a record high, right? But then go ahead, Israel, and do your overnight strike on Iran. So obviously we have stock futures under pressure. 466 points down for the Dow. That's off the lows, actually. S&P futures down 1%. NASDAQ futures about the same. Obviously, oil is up 8%. Listen, when you look at this and you look at, obviously, any kind of negative news from markets, you get a rotation into risk-off assets, and that's what's exactly happening this morning. Gold is higher, hitting a one-month high. You have, obviously, defense stocks. Like you look at Raytheon's up 8% pre-market. Exxon, oil spike, that's up. So as we said when we had this period of time when there was all this tariff derangement syndrome in markets, we can also see that, you've got to take a look at your diversification and make sure you're not holding all your money in risk-on assets, right? You have to have a balance through this kind of market. Because what we're seeing right now has been this consolidation also across markets. And what you have to keep in mind is sooner or later, there's going to need to be a catalyst to move us higher. And whether that's trade deals, most likely the tax cuts that hopefully, actually just the marginal tax rate staying the same, not tax cuts, but the tax bill going through, which I don't think is going to be as easy as it appears to be from members of the Republicans. So that all creates volatility, right? So we had said last year that volatility, uncertainty was going to be the name of the game. Frustration. This is the year for that. But I say this often. I actually like this year better than last year because you have to be a stock picker. You have to do your homework. You have to understand what you're up against and know that this uncertainty is going to live with us. And then how do you smooth the ride? And I think that's what good advisors help people do. It's not only making, hopefully, portfolio moves to, modify that volatility, but emotionally help you to go through this emotionally and understand that, especially when there are short-term shocks in the market, that they do recover. So it's very predictable this morning where you see money is hiding out. And that's a good thing. So once you get through this process, then all of a sudden, you're sort of back to the market interprets it the way it is and moves ahead. And again, we don't know where we'll close today because wars in the Middle East are as common as Brent with his headphones on. So, it's just something you think that you would get used to, but you don't because they do come out of the blue. And you would expect this kind of reaction from markets. So we'll look and we'll see how that works out today. So again, oil prices surge, futures are down. We'll see where we go by the end of the day today. But again, perspective is the word for this year. You have to have perspective, and I hate to sound like some of these staid Wall Street firms that always tell you to stick to your plan. You should have a plan, and it should be a realistic plan, and should understand how dynamics change and that the price of investing is volatility. We're just not used to it. So we also had some pretty good news on the PPI. PPI came in at 0.1%. Like inflation is muted. We're absolutely seeing the fact that there is no evidence yet of tariffs getting passed through to consumers, right? So, yes, if you look inside the CPI numbers, some areas are heated, especially on the service side. But for the most part, inflation is headed in the right direction. And that's a good thing, right? So, but again, not enough when you look at the elements or the metrics within for the Fed to go ahead and lower rates just yet, at least when I look at it from their point of view, that, well, tariffs can eventually bring inflation. And I'm not saying it's not, but we've talked about this ad nauseum that you're probably not going to see an inflationary spike from recessions. Not that it's any better that markets are eating, companies are maybe eating it, these price increases, but we also front loaded a lot of inventory and we've got to work that down. So the numbers on inflation have been trending in the right direction, and that'll also be important. But I think the market's already given up on the Fed, and we'll see where that goes. We also have what we call now this shadow Fed, and that's also going to add an element to maybe volatility down the road, only because, again, you know, Powell's not going anywhere. He's got until May of 2026. So that dude's not going anywhere. At what you can get from this shadow Fed, and this shadow Fed is something that President Trump is looking to put into place. So at least you understand the opinions of the White House, and then you might get a feel, say, by the summer, hey, who is going to replace Powell? What kind of policies is this new Fed chair going to put in place? That could be very positive for markets next year. But what I'm saying is, again, volatility, uncertainty are absolutely in the soup this year. And if you have some assets that are diversified away from all the sexy stuff like Bitcoin and AI, even though I think longer term that's still where there's a lot of growth, today's the day you're glad you have some of the boring stuff in your portfolio, because that boring stuff is going to really alleviate some of the volatility that you're seeing in the portfolios that you have. If you have any questions, you always talk to your advisors, right? You're sticking to your plan. It's always legitimate to ask questions and try to understand what's going on, but understand also that these things happen. And that doesn't mean you react. That doesn't mean you go into your accounts today and make a change. That's not the right way to do it, right? Markets digest information, and then they live with it, and then they move forward. When you see all this information about tariffs that comes out, markets would overreact for a period of time. And now it's like, been there, done that, been there, done that. You may not feel that way, depending on how you feel about the conditions of what's going on, your political stance, the lens that you view things through may feel different for you. But that doesn't mean you take those out on your portfolio. That's the last thing that you want to do. Hey, we're going to talk about a lot about with our special guest, the Professor, Sarah Buenger. Sarah's here. Sarah's one of our wonderful support advisors, has got more certifications than I do, I think. And we're going to talk about, prospects for college graduates and things that you should know. And we're going to get to that in the next probably the next segment or the one after that. But we're going to be talking about that. That's going to be the most of what we're going to be talking about on the show today. So stay tuned.
Get daily investment news you can use, delivered at the speed of the internet at realinvestmentadvice.com.
Declare your financial independence from the mainstream financial media and join us for the next RIA Candid Coffee with Danny Ratliff and Lance Roberts, Saturday, June 28th. Know the enemies of your wealth and fight them on your terms. We'll arm you with the information you need. Register today for the Financial Independence Edition of Candid Coffee, Saturday, June 28th with Ratliff and Roberts at realinvestmentadvice.com. realinvestmentadvice.com.
Attention Chevron employees and anyone else receiving or considering a company severance package. We know the process can be intimidating. What should you know to maximize your payout? Lump sum or pension annuity, retirement plan rollover or not? What about tax timing your severance? The fiduciary advisors at RIA Advisors can help you make the best decisions for your situation. Call us today at 855-742-7526. That's 855-742-PLAN. Or online at realinvestmentadvice.com.
The Real Investment Show.
RIA Advisors Research is the envy of the industry. Our economic insights are featured on advisorperspectives.com, Fox Business, and MarketWatch. RIA provides advisors with marketing and back office support, objective research, and holistic, cutting-edge financial planning tools to meet your clients' needs. Want to join a winning team and be part of a fiduciary culture where you can do your best work? Then why haven't you contacted us yet? Go to our confidential advisor hub at realinvestmentadvice.com. RIA Advisors. Big enough where it matters, agile enough when it counts.
And now, another page from the Real Investment Advisors Investing Manifesto. Manage risk and volatility rather than trying to manage gains. You don't have to be right all the time. Long-term investing success is a 70% gain. Let us help you reach your financial goals with RIA Advisors. Neither bull nor bear. RIA Advisors, 281-501-1791 or online at realinvestmentadvice.com.
You're listening to The Real Investment Show.
And welcome back. So we're going to have a Cans of Coffee coming up on Saturday, June 28th at 8 a.m. This is going to be a live streamed webinar on StreamYard, so go sign up. So this is going to be Roberts and Ratliff. I can't say that Mr. Roberts will be in a good mood because that's rare, but he will be attending, answering your questions, maybe with a little snippy edge. How dare you ask that question? Why is that? What? But the man knows his stuff. Listen, if you were mired in charts all day, you may not be the happiest guy in the world either. And Danny will be there to lighten everything up. So it's going to be, what was it? What was that from remember that magazine, Highlights? Yeah. Will's like, no. I don't think Highlights is still around, but as kids, we read that.
The two guys?
We need like a...
It was Doofus and Gallant.
No, it's Goofus and Gallant.
I thought it was Doofus.
Well, I thought so too, but then I'm like, it makes sense with the G's.
Ah, okay. Yeah, alliteration.
Yeah. Today, we really honor Goofus. We hate Gallant in today's culture. We like Goofus.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. So the thing I will say is it's going to be great. A lot of questions. Know your enemies of wealth, including your emotions. So a lot of different questions that are going to be answered through this financial independence. So register today, right now. Larry Smith goes, no more Rosso relatives in chat. All my relatives are dead. So if you're seeing any of them in the chat, they're ghosts. The ghost in the machine. What is that? The ghost in the machine?
Yes.
Yeah.
The police?
The police, I think. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Goofus. Highlights had Goofus and Gallant.
Goofus and Gallant.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Today we have Goofus and Goofus in
They
Highlights.
weren't bad. They were just drawn that way.
They were pretty badly drawn. I hate, I had a love-hate relationship with that darn magazine. It was fairly somewhat intellectual, and I didn't have enough pictures in it for me when I was a kid at the dentist office. No, I was going to get some hole drilled in my tooth. Like, give me something more comforting than this Highlights. Like, I got to read like an encyclopedia here.
Yeah, I can never look at a Highlights magazine ever again without aching in my mouth.
That's right. I think they still make it, but only one person reads it. So it's called Highlight now with Goofus and Goofus. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. So I thought this study from the Federal Reserve Bank in New York was pretty interesting. The labor market for recent college graduates. And what's interesting about this, that the market deteriorated rapidly the first quarter of 2025. So the Fed does this quarterly, and I think it's pretty interesting. They have a great interactive, obviously, about, hey, listen, college graduates still make more money than high school graduates. That's perfectly fine. College graduates make up a huge percentage of our population now, probably more than ever that we've seen. But what's really good, if you want to take a look at this, you have kids headed off to college or thinking about it, there's an interactive that you could take a look at newyorkfed.org, and it gives you the distribution of not only annual wages for college graduates, but outcomes by major, which I think is pretty great. Listen, you want your kids to go to school, you want your kids to learn, but if they're probably going to school for sociology or anthropology, you may have a higher unemployment rate, and they just need to be conditioned to understand that. That might affect how many student loans you take out, looking at the return on investment. I think it's very smart to look at the return on investment when you are getting a degree and trying to, just not to go to college for college's sake, because the total percentage, I think, Sarah, you provided this information, 8.9% annually as a total percentage of the working population. It's almost like it's expected for you to have a degree, right?
Yeah, college graduates are growing as a percent of the entire population. So each year it's annualized at 8.9%.
So you think about that's tremendous growth. And it makes sense. You want your child to go to college, learn a skill, well, mostly go to college, although you are seeing a resurgence in trade schools, which I think is great. But, you look at the way I like Sarah looks at this. She looks at this as a process to really try to help people maximize the experience, and dates and different things that they need to be aware of. Parents of, kids going to school, coming up, going to college, how to maximize their financial aid or scholarships, which is very important with the cost of college. So, Sarah, you're always knee deep in this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So going to college is not the only path, but if it is a chosen path, you might as well do it structured and have a plan of action going into the process, just to make sure that you're doing things efficiently with your student. And of course, it's on the student's shoulders to get this stuff done. But as a parent, you can step in and kind of guide them in the right direction, at least.
Yeah. I think a lot of times, I see it anyway when I meet with clients. There's an emotional process to this that you almost have to take out, like you do with portfolio management and helping people with their financial plans, where, like the child has to go to this certain school because there's this image, right? I wrote in my book 12 years ago, you should start off in community college and take those basics and move on. My daughter did that. She brought it up to me, so thankfully she's at Emory. But her first couple of years, she was at community college, and she loved it. She learned a lot, and it gave her an idea of what she wanted to study, how will she study, what's her life going to be like. So it really prepared her well, and almost all the basic credits were taken. And I think it cost me for 2 years, I think the total was like $7,000. And I thought that she wanted to stay at home a little bit, work her job. So I thought that was smart. So to your point, you got to take the emotion out of it and look at it as pragmatic and a process, right?
Right.
Overall. So tell us a little bit about what we should be thinking about right now.
Yeah. So just to your earlier point about going to community college, things with this college admission process are changing over time. So even, since you and I were in college, things have changed enormously. So now, you can do the straight community college for a couple years. You can also get a lot of that done while you're still in high school. So that's an option as well. So
you didn't have that. I didn't have that option. Did you?
Exactly.
Have that?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you had AP, but now there's more options to do it. So you've got dual credit, IB, AP, you name it. You can probably get it done during high school at a lower cost. So that is doing your community college at the same time as high school.
Makes sense.
Regarding the purchase decision that you brought up earlier, I agree with you. A lot of times, the student and the family will say, we're, in our case, for example, we're a house full of Aggies. And so it's just just normal.
You gotta
Our kids
go.
are going to go to A&M.
Hi,
you know,
hey,
so
hey, Mom, I'm going to Texas Tech.
exactly. Well, that did not happen in our house.
I know.
But, you know, the kids will come forward and say, yeah, I'm going to go to this school, or it's just known in the family that you're going to go to this school. But it should be a purchase decision, just like anything else. So when you're looking at the college purchase decision, you should approach it with a budget in mind. You need to sit down and think about what your budget is that you're working with and determine whether or not that target school is in your budget. You know, if we were going forward to buy a house, a car, anything else, we would have a budget in mind. We would shop it out.
Right.
We would look for the best deal, research it. You should do the same with your college purchase experience.
And that's not always the case.
No,
to your point.
it's not.
I think maybe because of the cost of college, I mean, which is absolutely crazy, more parents and kids are probably having more of a pragmatic discussion just based on resources. And you don't want to, and we see studies that show how parents put their retirements at risk, right?
Sure.
They put their own plans at risk to put their kids through college. And there are a lot more resources. And that's where I think, Sarah, you have a lot of value is I don't think parents even scratch the surface or understand or know what's available to them and their children when it comes to college. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first you have to decide. Again, it comes back to the budget, figuring out how much that college is going to cost. So if you go to different sources, you can find different values for the cost of college at your chosen target schools. My suggestion is to go directly to the school because, for example, if you look up cost of attendance at A&M, you can find multiple sources that have different values for that cost. Go directly to the school's website. They all are required to have a tool now that tells you exactly how much it costs to attend. And the problem with just saying it out loud is it depends on the major that you choose once you're in the school. Some majors cost more than others. So you'll have to actually go in and use their calculator to determine the cost of college. You can accumulate that cost over 4 years to see what the total cost is going to be. But when you're looking at that, it's not necessarily the sticker price that's being published on the website. It has certain components. So included in the cost of college, you've got the tuition and fees portion, housing and food or room and board. You've got books and supplies, travel, personal expenses. So all of those things are components that are included in the total cost of attendance. And you can back some of those things out. So think about what you're paying right now for your student. You're already paying their food. You're already paying their travel, probably gas costs and things like that, unless you're Lance. Then you're probably not paying those things.
I like we got Sarah on Lance now. That's pretty good.
Be nice to me, Lance.
He's not nice to anybody.
Yeah. So, you know, if you're Lance, you might not be paying those costs, but otherwise you're probably paying some of those already. So you can back that out when you're thinking about the budget.
So according to the New York Fed, if you're getting a fine arts degree, your unemployment rate's going to be close to 53%. Return on investment. We're going to continue this discussion when we get back.
The Real Investment Advice blog. It's required reading for the informed investor. Catch it today at realinvestmentadvice.com.
Declare your financial independence from the mainstream financial media and join us for the next RIA Candid Coffee with Danny Ratliff and Lance Roberts, Saturday, June 28th. Know the enemies of your wealth and fight them on your terms. We'll arm you with the information you need. Register today for the Financial Independence Edition of Candid Coffee, Saturday, June 28th with Ratliff and Roberts at realinvestmentadvice.com. realinvestmentadvice.com.
If you're working and looking to retire soon, a Medicare special enrollment period is in your future. Understanding Medicare choices, enrollment deadlines, and costs are essential to your overall standard of living in retirement. The wrong choices can cost you thousands in penalties. Make sense of Medicare's alphabet soup with RIA advisors, online resources, and one-on-one partners to help secure the healthcare insurance choice that is right for your lifestyle and budget and avoid gaps in coverage. Click on the insurance tab at realinvestmentadvice.com today. realinvestmentadvice.com.
The Real Investment Show.
Are you a financial advisor sneaking peeks at our stuff? Instead of trying to do it all yourself, why not just join the team at RIA Advisors? Our full-service organization can provide you with the support, unparalleled research, and tools for managing your clients' money and honoring the fiduciary pledge of putting clients' best interest first. Don't take our word for it. Talk to the advisors that work with us. Want to come win with us? Go to our confidential advisor hub at realinvestmentadvice.com. RIA Advisors, big enough where it matters, agile enough when it counts.
Can't catch the whole show now? Listen to our podcast later at realinvestmentadvice.com.
In the chat, they've been going on about first PCs.
Yeah.
And if you had a PC with a floppy drive.
The Real Investment Show podcast.
My first actual quote computer was a Tandy 1000 with dual 5.25-inch floppy drive and a whopping 512K of memory.
Same show, your schedule.
I felt so fortunate in college in my dorm room to have my own computer,
right,
with my own printer.
You were a spoiled rich kid.
Well, I don't know about that.
At realinvestmentadvice.com.
Instead of being in the bar going, hey, what's your major? He's like, hey, I have a computer with a printer.
Why don't you come check out my dot matrix? Right. And now, another page from the Real Investment Advisors Investing Manifesto. Bulls win in bull markets. Bears win in bear markets. Eagles soar above and take advantage of opportunity. Let us help you soar as you reach your financial goals with RIA Advisors. Neither bull nor bear. RIA Advisors, 281-501-1791 or online at realinvestmentadvice.com.
The Real Investment Show.
Attention Chevron employees and anyone else receiving or considering a company severance package. We know the process can be intimidating. What should you know to maximize your payout? Lump sum or pension annuity, retirement plan rollover or not? What about tax timing your severance? The fiduciary advisors at RIA Advisors can help you make the best decisions for your situation. Call us today at 855-742-7526. That's 855-742-PLAN or online at realinvestmentadvice.com.
The Real Investment Show YouTube channel has all our videos ready for your easy access. Now, with the new and improved Before the Bell report. Subscribe and bookmark our YouTube channel at realinvestmentadvice.com.
You're listening to The Real Investment Show.
So stock futures are still down, actually recovering just a little bit, but still down over 1% for the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ. Oil up still close to 8%. We're obviously going to open lower based on Iran and Israel conflict. And again, markets will digest it as we go forward. Obviously, there's expectation of additional raids and other things that are going to happen here. So we'll see. We'll see. And again, volatility is the watchword for the year. But if you're balanced correctly and you don't have all your money in the sexiest stuff and you got it in some of the boring stuff, you're going to hold up pretty well today, right? Because we are seeing some sector rotation into the so-called safe havens, right? And gold is one of them. So we're talking about college. And I think there could be a whole show just on the psychology of parents and kids when it comes to when their children are going to college. Like in my family, it was my grandparents who were high school janitors pushing me through education because everything they ever did was labor related, right? It was none, my great grandfather came here from Italy. My grandparents didn't have much of an education at all. So when I came along, it was the expectation that I go to college. And I was the first one in the family to do that. You don't do what we do. You go to college and get an education. My grandmother thought, and she instilled it in my head, education is the most important thing. She goes, whether you're going to be 20 or you're going to be 60, She goes, and she was us. She was always reading books and learning things. She wasn't very intelligent, but she had a lot of street smarts. But she began to learn and read the newspapers and other things, and she realized how important education was. So, and she respected that. So it is still today. I still think it is an emotional decision. But you were saying, and which I agree with, you got to look at it as a large purchase. And yes, it's a large purchase that'll pay off maybe longer term than how long you hold your automobile. But you got to know what the budget is, shop around, research different things for best deals, not be emotional about I have to have my child go to this college, at least starting out. I would love for my child to finish maybe at my alma mater, but do they always have to do that? You should really start preparing. It obviously seems, based on you're able to look at some of these courses in high school, Sarah, you got to really start looking a lot sooner than we did. When it comes to college prep, right?
You do. So things are getting really competitive. So
when should you start if you have children in school? Like, when should you start actually getting in that mindset and prep?
Now's good.
Well, where part of the school should I be? Like, if I'm in elementary school, I'm not.
No, in elementary, I think you're pretty good.
You can breathe there.
Yeah, junior high, you might think about looking into activities and things that they can start getting involved in.
So as young as junior high, you might at least start looking at
things they might be interested in, and how to explore additional opportunities within those things that they're interested in. And they're still filling themselves out in junior high. They don't know exactly what they want to be doing, but high school is where you really have to key in and start deciding how you're going to proceed. And from a parent standpoint, you might be thinking, well, this isn't really that big of a deal. But as I mentioned earlier, things have only gotten more competitive as we've moved along. College admission process in general is just getting sort of cutthroat. UT, for example, recently limited their auto admit to 5%. First, it started out at 10, then they limited it to 6. Now they've dropped down to 5% only. Wow. Private schools like Rice are even more selective than that. So you've got a lot of your private schools and Ivy Leagues that are way more selective than even 5%. Fortunately, A&M still gives auto admit for the top 10%. So that's one good factor working in your favor. However,
so what do you think? So since it is so competitive, it's almost like going for like a job that you really want. And there are a lot of people that are as well skilled, right?
You absolutely have to position yourself from the standpoint of being one of the top candidates to apply.
So what goes into that? So I understand the grades. I'm not, that's a given, like you said, but there are going to be other things,
right?
Qualitative things even that we don't really have a mindset for that we're going to have to be looking at. What are some of those things you think?
Sure. Absolutely grades. But not everybody has to be top 10%. It's great because then you've got auto admit. It's one thing off your shoulders. You're in, you've got it. That's fine. But, if your grades aren't the best, you can still get in. I had one that was not in the top 10%, and he also got in. So, just make sure that you have extracurriculars and not just check the box extracurriculars, but like things that are meaningful. For example, instead of doing a sport, did you do sports camps? Did you help mentor younger kids in sports? Did you, how far did you excel in sports? And if sports isn't your thing, you can do the same through other projects. So I had one of my kids is really into STEM. He's now in engineering at A&M. And for him, we made sure that we went to some conferences, some engineering conferences and that kind of thing. So you can get some things onto their resume, their college resume, that will kind of show them to be well-rounded, show them to have a passion for a certain field that they're trying to enter in college. So that's kind of what you want to look at there.
And stick with something.
Right.
Right. In other words, showing that you had this passion, but you had this whole plan and you were very well involved in community, like whatever classes, whatever it was, or some of those things that show your ability to be disciplined.
Sure.
And I would think that could help. So, but it seems like you need a game plan for that too. It's not just, oh my gosh, we got to look at the budget. We also have to look at what else are we doing? Even if it's work related, we did that with Haley early on. She was always interested in math. So we had her in sort of math classes. She learned Korean. She was in the clubs. and she was involved in a lot of the stuff, and we started her early on that. So you got to think about it sooner, obviously, than we did as kids. But also, hey, what my kids got good grades, but man, this school is fierce, right? What other skills look attractive? Think of it like a job interview. What other skills? Maybe there are two people that have the same kind of mannerism. They seem like they're two great candidates, but there's going to be something that's going to bring one over the edge. I ran this project. I did this internship. I'm noticing how internships are becoming indispensable. When I was going to college, Sarah, it wasn't going to really affect your odds as much.
Right.
But it seems like internships, you have to be real aggressive with that. What do you think?
Yeah, it definitely adds, it brings your resume up a level in the job field. So going out, if you've got several internships, then it sets you ahead. Think about from the employer standpoint. Here at RIA, for example, or I worked at a prior firm where I was the one doing the hiring. And so you've got a sea of resumes in front of you. The first thing that you have to judge on is a piece of paper about that person. So you want your piece of paper to be as valuable as possible. And you do that through the experiences that you have as an individual and the internships and what you can bring forward from a human resource standpoint for that employer. And so you have to make the first cut with your piece of paper. So you want all the components on that paper to be as valuable as possible. And that includes for your high school student, clubs, athletics, awards and honors, leadership roles or other officer positions. So come forward and show that not only are you a participant, but you're a leader in what you've done and you're teaching others and you're kind of paying it forward and that kind of thing. Community service is a big factor. Your work experience.
Community service too.
So that's a big key thing to start working on this summer with your student, or have your student do it because they should be doing all this. Just create a big Excel spreadsheet that has all of their activities separated out by categories that I just listed, and not only what they did, but each year that they did it and how many hours they spent. Because inevitably, either on your applications or in scholarship applications, they're going to start asking how many hours did you do for that activity. So somewhere along the line, you're going to need to know the hours. Of course, ACT, SAT, a lot of schools are test optional now, which just means that if you've taken the exam and you had a really good score, absolutely send that in as part of your admission. If you didn't have the best of scores, maybe don't send that because they don't have to have it anymore. So that, if you didn't do well, then just withhold that score. Yeah, especially when you take the SAT, when your student takes the SAT, they can elect whether or not to auto-submit that to the schools after. Maybe don't do the auto-submit until you know what the score is going to be, and then elect to pay to send the score to the school after. That would seem to make a lot
more sense than auto-submit. That seems overconfidence to me.
Yeah.
I don't want any of that in my investing, and I don't want any of that in that part. So, but the summer, you think you got the summer off, but this is the time really around July, so you really have to start getting your applications in, or how does that work?
Yep. When you finish junior year, your student finishes junior year, wake them up, by the way. I don't know if we have any students listening. Wake them up. Let them listen to this. This is where their work starts.
They don't wake up till 11.
Yeah, I know. You can have a lazy summer, but it needs to be in moderation because there's absolutely some things that need to be done before August. So, again, this wraps back around to this isn't that big of a deal, but the landscape has become more competitive, so you need to get an early start so that you're ready exactly on August the 1st to submit to your target schools.
Nice. August 1st. That's your date. But we're going to talk. I want to continue on this topic of don't be sleeping in July. Better wake up. We'll be right back.
Get daily investment news you can use, delivered at the speed of the internet at realinvestmentadvice.com.
Declare your financial independence from the mainstream financial media and join us for the next RIA Candid Coffee with Danny Ratliff and Lance Roberts, Saturday, June 28th. Know the enemies of your wealth and fight them on your terms. We'll arm you with the information you need. Register today for the Financial Independence Edition of Candid Coffee, Saturday, June 28th with Ratliff and Roberts at realinvestmentadvice.com. realinvestmentadvice.com.
RIA Advisors Research is the envy of the industry. Our economic insights are featured on advisorperspectives.com, Fox Business, and MarketWatch. RIA provides advisors with marketing and back office support, objective research, and holistic, cutting-edge financial planning tools to meet your clients' needs. Want to join a winning team and be part of a fiduciary culture where you can do your best work? Then why haven't you contacted us yet? Go to our confidential advisor hub at realinvestmentadvice.com. RIA Advisors. Big enough where it matters, agile enough when it counts.
The Real Investment Show.
Attention Chevron employees and anyone else receiving or considering a company severance package. We know the process can be intimidating. What should you know to maximize your payout? Lump sum or pension annuity, retirement plan rollover or not? What about tax timing your severance? The fiduciary advisors at RIA Advisors can help you make the best decisions for your situation. Call us today at 855-742-7526. That's 855-742-PLAN. Or online at realinvestmentadvice.com.
And now, another page from the Real Investment Advisors Investing Manifesto. A passive investment portfolio requires active risk management. It's not a choice, it's necessity. Diversification doesn't protect against risk of loss. Let us actively help you reach your financial goals with RIA Advisors. Neither bull nor bear. RIA Advisors, 281-501-1791 or online at realinvestmentadvice.com.
You're listening to The Real Investment Show.
And welcome back. So we're here with special guest and one of our wonderful extensions of advice and guidance. Sarah Buenger is here from, how was your drive this morning?
It was amazing.
Amazing drive.
Mm-hmm. No traffic.
No traffic coming in from the College Station area.
Yeah. Going home probably will be a little
bit
different.
A little bit. Hopefully no rain.
Yep.
So always, as Brent puts up on the board, these funny things. The year I was born, getting a little far on that little scrolly thing. Man, that little scrolly thing is a humbling experience. I'm going to tell you. And first of all, who's hitting the scrolly down to 1902? Because it goes, I said, how far does this thing go on the scrolly? And I'm going, 1901, 1903. I'm like, first of all, I don't even know where my brain is. What's a scrolly? But who's doing the scrolly that far back?
Somebody mentioned in conversation last week with Lance and I, and the phrase, at the turn of the century. And I immediately thought from 1800s to 1900s.
There you go.
I was wrong.
Oh, well. Well, all I can say is it's a little discouraging. Now, our intern, Will, he just exhales on the scrolly thing, and it moves a little, and there he is. Oh, to be that age again.
Just a puff.
Just a puff on the scrolly.
The only thing that's nice about the scrolly is that it reminds me of The Price is Right. I always wanted to be spinning the wheel at the end, so now I get to spin the wheel a couple times to find my birthday.
Actually, Sarah does that with clients. She's got that Price is Right wheel.
Yeah.
And depending upon where they hit is what goal they're going to fund and if they're going to make it or not.
Nice.
Not true.
They're not getting any money.
That's not
they
true.
They just have to. Hey, so we're looking about, listen, this whole college thing is a planning process. It's not, let's just get through it. You're planning way before, and now you're planning up to the point in August where, before August, you've got to get your applications in. And we were talking about also, which amazing, is just the competition, how the bar has been raised for anybody looking to go to school. So we didn't finish that conversation, but what kind of insight do you have for everybody on this, Sarah?
Yeah, so earlier I mentioned that A&M does still allow auto admit for the top 10%. Of course, there's way more applicants than just the top 10%. The biggest thing to know is that the number of applications has been increasing over the last several years. So the number of applications has reached over 79,000. Of those, they have an acceptance rate in past years of about 60%, but that rate even dipped down to 54% for the class of 2028.
Huh.
And that actually includes all the blend team students, but it does not include the students who are actually admitted to the A&M system, but assigned to a sister campus elsewhere for the first year, and then they transfer in. So that program's called PSA. It's just assigning you to a sister campus first, and then you get to come to A&M after. But the big news is that beginning with the 2026 admission season, and this is kind of one of the reasons there's some urgency behind getting your application in, A&M has come forward with an admission cap. So they'll allow new enrollments of only 15,000 per year for the next 5 to 7 years. And that's partly just to allow the infrastructure of A&M and the resources available to catch up with the rate of growth that the school has experienced.
That's an alignment that you really got to think about, right?
Right.
And
because the quality dips if
right.
you don't have the right infrastructure and the right resources through faculty.
A&M is saying, listen, we're doing this because we understand, unlike what we do here with civil engineering and the roads not being fit and all that stuff. This is real infrastructure discussion about. I would think everything is so well planned out, just projections for the school, what buildings need revampment or increase this number of buildings we have and facilitators and teachers and all. But so that's you're saying that some schools might have to do this depending on their growth rate, right? Especially in the South. Southern schools in the South have really grown dramatically with their applications, I've noticed.
So, we talked about earlier that UT is limiting their admission to top 5% only. This is another way to limit the admission for A&M to put a total enrollment cap of 15,000. Of the 15,000, only 11,750 will be new freshmen. So to put this into perspective, 79,000 applications, enrollment 11,750.
Wow.
So think about the difference between those numbers, and that's a 41% decrease. Let's talk about, I'm getting that number from, they had 79,000 applications. Of those, 43,110 were admitted. And of the 43,110 that were admitted, 19,914 actually enrolled for classes. And this is for class of 2028. The numbers for 29 are not published yet. But if we're going with the 28 numbers, then that enrollment of 19,914 goes down to 11,750. That's a 41% decrease.
That's a big drop. Yeah.
Yep. So have your student prepare ahead. Go ahead, start researching your target schools. You can look up their admission process right now to find out what the application process is, what the admission process is. Some of them have early admit, early decision, but those are binding choices. So make sure you research what that means for the colleges that you're looking at. And then among your target schools, you should have, a group of target schools that you want first, and then a plan B or your secondary list of colleges next. You want to be able to have your student apply for their target schools when applications open on August the 1st. And you can talk to our intern, Will. He's one that submitted his application very first. And that puts you in line.
Shock. Okay.
Well, you need to. You need to, especially now with the enrollment cap, because the earlier you get in line, the earlier you'll find out if you're admitted. Those admissions are published on a rolling basis starting in September. And so you'll find out every week or two a new group of admits. And that puts you on the housing list, and it puts you on the parking pass list. So the further you are down in the list, you might get waitlisted and parking might not be available. So That's things to think about.
Those are big things. And also think about, I don't hear a lot about discussions that go awry when it comes to kids that want to go to certain schools, and parents, the practicality of it financially is just not there. So I've had parents and their children have tough discussions, and it's really much the parents dictating it. Well, how much debt you need to have a discussion then about how much debt do you really want to take on when you come out of school? Because I cannot afford to pay. I can subsidize, but we have to explore, Scott. We have to explore as much as we can on the financial side, not because I don't make enough money. I make a good living, but your A school is way out of my price range. The psychology of a student going from an A school to a B school, I've noticed as I talk to parents, I say, well, how did she take it? That's the question that usually comes out of my mouth, because she's so set on university of blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you say, listen, we got to look at these B schools. And every time I said, well, how did she take it? How did he take it? The parents will tell me, well, discussions are not good. It's the kids are set, like it's almost like they've drank some sort of Kool-Aid, but they want to go to that school and no other school is going to suffice. And then this discussion of looking at it practically. So I think there's just so many fascinating dynamics to that process, and I wonder how, as planners, we can help if we get this information or if people come to us and say, how do I handle this? I think that's tough, especially the more competitive it gets.
Yeah.
And working parents, how much time do I have to put together a game plan? This takes time and effort to do, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but there's a lot that can stress you out, I see here as a parent.
Yeah. So the best way to do it is to get your cost. We said this is a college purchase decision, not a mandatory thing. So find the cost of college, back out the things that you're paying for anyway already, and focus on just the cost.
I think that's a good point, though, because you're not taking out those things you're already paying for.
Yeah. Once you have your 4-year cost of college, look at the funding sources that you have available, scholarships, work, the savings that you've already put forward. Some of it will come from cash flow, so you back out everything that you have to put towards college, and the rest is for the student to pay in either work or student loans or whatever methods that they would like to do that. So you chart this out on a page, a spreadsheet, show them this is what it costs you to go to college A. This is what it costs you to go to college B. And then let them be a part of that discussion and a part of the decision making. If 100% is going to come forward for your student to pay, if you're, in the shoes of Lance versus, if you're in a different parent's shoes, you might be willing to fund some of that for your student.
And remember, Lance is the one who has the shoes. The kids don't have any.
But come to us. We do this all the time.
I have a client that actually put up a whiteboard that they work on. Created the Excel spreadsheet, but they bought this huge whiteboard, almost as the size of the window here in our studio.
Love it.
And they go in and they have the discussion around the whiteboard. And he says it's actually helped as opposed to going into spreadsheets and all that. So listen, sign up for financial independence. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Will. Candid Coffee, sign up. Have a great weekend. Lance on Monday. He'll be in a good mood, I promise. I can't.